My name is Maniza Naqvi, and this is the 34th episode of the Little Book Company podcast. My guest for this podcast is Salil Tripathi, human rights expert and advisor and writer. He is the author of 3 works of nonfiction and has chaired PEN International's Writers in Prison Committee for 6 years, ending in 2021. He is now a member of PEN International's board. His 3 works of nonfiction are Offence, The Hindu Case, The Colonel Who Would Not Repent, The Bangladesh War and Its Unquiet Legacy, Detours, Songs of the Open Road. Welcome, Salil.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
I'm so very honored to have you here. And before we talk about your books and your work, shall we begin with the shutting down of your Twitter account in 2020?
Oh, yeah, sure. That was a little kerfuffle, as the Irish say. Yeah.
And what was that about? Was it about a
Yeah.
poem?
No, I think what happened was that, there was this something called Bharat Army or whatever. There was this Twitter group which had decided to take down liberal accounts which speak a lot on India and Indian affairs. And I think 2020. So yeah, I was here in the US till 2019. I lived in America, till in England. And what happened was that every year in those days, on 6th of December, which is a day of infamy and shame in India, because you would know, and most people of South Asia would know, it was the day that Babri Masjid was destroyed by the goons from the RSS and BJP. I used to read out a poem or put up video of a poem, which is quite critical of what the BJP did to India and continues to do to India. And obviously, some people didn't like it, and they found some excuse to complain about it, saying that it offended their sentiments and sensibilities. And India is now a republic of hurt sentiments. And Twitter immediately suspended my account. I think it lasted about 36 or 48 hours only. So, compared to the grand scheme of things, it was not such a disastrous occurrence. And I was just gratified by the support I got from most people on the liberal sphere and the left sphere, some centrists, and a couple of them even from the right who spoke up and said that this was not right. And I was reinstated. So that's basically the story. I mean,
And
many more people have suffered far worse than I have.
Mhm.
So I certainly don't want to treat it as a medal of honor.
So you mentioned a group called the Bharat Army?
I think so. I can't remember the name, but it was I mean, it may even be like one person and his nephew who was running the website. But they were basically, because as soon as I was taken down, they crowed about it and they gloated and they put up a video, not a video, but a tweet saying that one more down kind of a thing, and then lots of people congratulated that account. So, yeah. So somebody did complain, whether it was one person or 100 people, I really don't know.
And would you know if they were sitting here in the US or?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I mean, these are anonymous trolls, right? So
Right.
they could be anywhere. Yeah, they could even be people supported by Putin in Russia and paid for by the BJP. Who knows?
Who knows? And would you, and this was because of a poem that you recorded and
Yeah, that poem is an old one. What happened was that in 2009, I had written a book called Offence, the Hindu Case, which basically outlines instances where Hindus have started taking offense to get things banned in the kind of, competitive illiberalism.
Mhm.
Because whenever you ask Hindus in India and abroad, are you tolerant? They say, yes, of course we are. And then they say, but you've got these things banned. They say, oh, yes, but we have to do it because Christians get this banned and Muslims get that banned.
Mhm.
So I've always called it competitive intolerance.
Mhm.
And I think the big boom in India was, of course, due to the ban on Satanic Verses.
Mhm.
And, it was banned, but whereas M.F. Hussein's art, which was very critical of, not critical of, but very interesting about Hindu gods and goddesses when that was attacked, and the government didn't ban those works of art. So immediately the thought was that, oh, if you're a Muslim, you can get away with it, but if you're a Hindu, you cannot. And therefore, they started trying to do that. So this book was written more as a response to that, Hindus are just like others when it comes to intolerance. I mean, we are speaking at the end of July in 2024, and we saw how a lot of the Catholic Church has reacted to the Olympic opening ceremony, when it's clear that it was not really what they did at the end. That scene was not really about the Last Supper, but it was about bacchanalian delights. But that didn't matter. They felt that they were kept being left out of the Intolerance Olympics, and they also wanted the gold medal. So all
Well,
the religions of the world want to be at the top of the table, unfortunately.
well, but it is interesting that um, when Charlie Hebdo
Yeah,
decides to, print cartoons that denigrate the, reverence, the spirit of, the sentiments of a whole religion, then that's okay for the Catholic Church and for every other church.
yeah, but at the same time, we have to remember that 11 people were murdered after
Yes,
the
yes,
cartoon was published, and
yes.
we also should remember that the same Charlie Hebdo has also been extremely critical, and he has made many cartoons about Sarkozy, about the Jews, about Catholics, about Christians, everybody. Charlie Hebdo takes no prisoners. So, I mean, it's part of the French satirical tradition where they really lampoon anything that looks ridiculous. So I'm not I'm very happy to defend Charlie Hebdo. That's not the problem. The problem lay with those who acted the way they did in response to Charlie Hebdo, and not so much what Charlie Hebdo did.
Let me then be defend the Hindutva sentiment. Do
Yeah.
they have uh, is there a case to be made for them to say, well, the Muslims take offense to everything and they get away with everything. They can't stand a piece of fiction, and they go on a rampage about it, and nobody bans them, or and they face no consequences for that. And yet, if we say a word about paintings that we don't like, then all hell breaks loose. Or if
Yeah, no, I hear that, and I hear that all the time. I was at a panel at the Lincoln Center here in New York the other day, and a very fine gentleman said that, you said that, Hussein was had to leave India, but if he had done the same paintings about the Prophet Muhammad, he would have been murdered. First of all, that's an imponderable. We don't know, but we do know that Hindu dissidents and Hindu writers and activists have been murdered, by Hindu nationalists. I can name four of them right away: M.M. Kalburgi, Narendra Dabholkar, Gobind Pansar, and Gauri Lankesh are four examples that I know of who have been killed by Hindus. So it's not as if Hinduism is a paragon of, or Hindutva, actually. Hinduism may be a paragon of tolerance. That's what they claim, and it's not for me to argue with them. But Hindutva clearly is not a paragon of tolerance. The problem is that Hindutva's adherents claim to be tolerant, claim that Muslims are not tolerant, and then they behave exactly like the people that they claim to hate. And that hypocrisy is problematic.
Hmm. And where do you think this is all going now? What do
Oh,
you?
it's terrible. I think Salman Rushdie put it very well. He was interviewed and he has said this many times that if you don't like a book, you mentioned the fact that, if Hindus don't like a work of art, they have to lump it. No, they can ignore it. They can write against it. They can do another cartoon of the painter. They can criticize it. They can challenge it. They can ridicule it. They can campaign against it. But what they cannot do is to damage the art or to attack the artist.
Mhm.
And I think that's the difference that is being lost. And I mean, it is not just for the Hindu adherents. I mean, it applies even to Muslims. I mean, of course. But if Hindus claim to be tolerant and liberal and so on, then this is what they should be doing, rather than saying that they do it and therefore we must do it too.
And isn't it the job of, not the job, but isn't it the point of good art to provoke?
Absolutely. I mean, the whole point of art is that it's a work of art. If you don't like it, don't see it. And if you like it, react to it. And if you want to challenge it, criticize it. I mean, people have said many things about many works of art that they did not like over the years. And that's the way it should be. I mean, the whole point of art is to provoke discussion and not to silence criticism.
In fact, isn't it the job of art to make sure that there is no silence?
Yeah, absolutely. Silence is deathly, right?
Deathly. Mm-hmm. So how will we have debates and conversations and arguments if everybody is told what to believe and everybody believes in what they are told and just agrees?
It's terrible. I mean, that's the way the world is going. I mean, I'm afraid, because I can't. I mean, I can't think of any group that is willing to take criticism on its face, because people talk about Buddhism as being a faith of peace and nonviolence until you go to Myanmar or you go to Sri Lanka or Vietnam, and then you get a very different kind of aggressive, in your face Buddhism. So I think, I mean, we have to be probably keep religion in our hearts if you're religious, and be prepared of one thing. One of the things I mentioned in this first book of mine, um, where I had written this poem about my mother in 2009, is that there was a Hindu sage, or not sage, but a philosopher, let's put it that way, called Vivekanand. And in 1893, he had come to Chicago for the World Congress of Religions. And he was very well known as a philosopher for Advaita Vedanta, which basically talks about the oneness of human being. And it's a fine philosophy if that's your cup of tea. And there is a very nice episode that I read in his autobiography where Vivekananda goes to Kashmir, and in Kashmir he finds ruins of old temples, which he is told have been destroyed by Muslim invaders. He's very upset about it. So he's meditating and he's extremely angry, and he said that he had a vision of the goddess, the Devi, who came in front of him. And she said, "Child, why are you angry?" He said, "I'm angry because I've been I went to Kashmir and I saw what they've done to your temple, and there's nothing that can be done about it." And then apparently, I mean, this is all in his writing, so whether it is true or not, you have to basically ask Vivekanand, who's no longer with us. But he said, apparently the goddess asked him, "Are you there to protect me or am I there to protect you?" And I think that's a very, very good point, that if these divine beings are so powerful, so omniscient, so omnipresent, and so strong, do they really need mere mortals like you and me to protect them? They can protect themselves. They are there to look after us. So we should have confidence in that and be sure that, a mere cartoon by Charlie Hebdo, or a mere sketch by M.F. Hussein, or a mere Olympic ceremony by the Olympic Committee in France is not going to upset someone or something as supreme as the divine being.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well said. And
Right.
there's something you said earlier about, religion can be all well and good, but keep it in your heart. And I just thought,
Absolutely. I mean, my mother was devout Hindu. My father was a devout Hindu. My mother used to go to the temple almost every evening. There was a temple near our home in Bombay. My father used to worship Ganesha, the elephant-headed god, but never ever did they say, I must do the same. And, at a particular age, I think maybe I was 8 or 9, I said, frankly, I'm get bored. I don't want to do it. They never told me I have to do it. And that's the way it should be. I mean that would be wonderful. So if a young girl who's Muslim wants to wear the hijab, let her. If she doesn't want to wear the hijab, let her. Nobody else should tell her what she should do.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I guess keeping it in your heart is sort of parallel to the fable of the Pandora's box, right? Uh, it's all well and good as long as religion stays in your heart, in your Pandora's box. And the moment you bring it into the public space and into public discourse, it's going to wreak havoc.
Yeah, and there's another distinction we must learn to make, which is between the religion and the devout. Because the religion is an idea. An idea can be debated and criticized and bitterly opposed and even ridiculed. But you should never ridicule the people because, people are people.
Mhm.
And there's no point. It's fine to criticize Hinduism, but stupid to criticize Hindus. It
Mhm.
is fine to criticize Islam, but stupid to blame Muslims. And the same with Christianity and Judaism and all that. Because people are human beings and they are our equals and we should respect them and their humanity.
But
But
we,
what they believe in, I mean, that can be challenged, that can be debated, that can be argued with, and so on.
Salil, isn't it so convenient then? Because we spend our time criticizing our religion or someone else's, but not criticizing economic inequality and.
Absolutely. You're so right. You're so right. Absolutely. I mean, what is worse is that, the gross inequality. I mean, there's a report. I mean, I live in US, I have a British passport, and, I grew up in India. But when I look at India, according to the group that the French economist Thomas Piketty has put up, you can figure out. I mean, he has said that India today is more unequal than under the British Raj. I mean, India today has worse inequality indices than then. That is a matter of shame,
Mhm,
not what else happens in India.
mhm. Is that in proportionality or in absolute terms?
No, well, I think he's looking at the Gini coefficient, and that's basically measuring the difference between the richest and the poorest.
Mhm, mhm. Well, in that case, let's go with the Ambanis since everybody's talking about the Ambanis.
Yeah,
And how religious they are and their religiosity. They wear it on their sleeves, their collars, their ears, their foreheads, everywhere. And yet the inequality around them is obscene.
it is. It is absolutely. I mean, everybody is entitled to celebrate a family wedding the way they want. I don't have any quarrel about that. But the exhibitionism is a problem at a time when so many people are, I mean, they've spent, like, I'm told the figure is 600 million is what was spent on this wedding, and which is more than the budget of many countries around the world. Let's put it that way. But and it's their money, and they can do with it what they want, is what many people tell me, which is all fine. But to do that in a country where about 70 to 80% of the people are dependent on food handouts from the government, where something like 60% of people under the age of 30 are looking for work and don't have jobs. That is obscene. And that shows the failure of the tax system, which doesn't know how to get the money from the wealthy and give it where it needs to be spent. I'm not saying it should be given away to the poor, but it could be spent right to create the opportunities. And that's where the system is failing. I don't want to blame any individual for that, but the system is failing.
And it's the same group of people then also support a very, very right-wing government and
Yes,
have the temerity to say that they spent less than 1% of their wealth on the wedding, whereas an average Indian family spends up to 5% of their wealth
yeah,
on.
sure, but I mean, that percentage mean nothing. I mean, 1% of Bill Gates' wealth is million times 5% of my wealth, right? I mean, I'll never be able to reach even 1% of Bill Gates' wealth in my life. So if Bill Gates spends only 1% of his wealth on something, it doesn't mean anything at all. I mean, but if I were to spend 5% of my wealth on even something as ridiculous as buying chocolates, it would be stupid.
Mhm. So would you consider that being out of touch with reality around them, or would you consider that cynicism of the highest order?
I think it's cynicism and callousness. I don't, in India, you can't escape poverty, right? I mean, I grew up there. You come out, I mean, I know where they live, Antila in Bombay. It's not far from where I grew up, Kemp's Corner. You come out, you take the road down from Altamount Road where Mr. Ambani lives, and just turn left towards Grant Road and Gwalior Tank and go about 20, 30 minutes out from where they are. And you will see some of the worst signs of lower middle class homes which are ramshackle, and after that you'll see urban slums. So to say that you don't know what's going on around you shows a certain kind of callousness or cynicism, as you put it. Yeah.
So we can see it from their windows. It's just below
They
that.
can. Actually, they can, because, they are, I mean, I'm now being very pedantic here, but I know exactly where the building is. And if you look on the other side of the Mahalakshmi side, you can indeed see some slums.
Mhm. And but also to give them some benefit of a doubt, by spending $600 million on this gigantic public relationing exercise, didn't they put India on the social map and social calendar, and really show India in this sort of mythological, give it a narrative that was like a big, gigantic Bollywood film? And who
Oh,
doesn't
yes. Oh,
film?
yes, they did. They certainly did that. And those who have never heard of India before, or those who only know that India was a basket case, would now probably think that, oh, all Indians are rich. But then those are the people who are not, I mean, people who make serious decisions about India, positively or negatively, are not going to get swayed by such imagery.
Mhm, mhm. But it did also do a great service in showing on a world stage that everybody who is powerful in the world can be bought.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Kim Kardashian was there, Tony Blair, I think, was there, Boris Johnson was certainly there, Bill Gates was there, Zuckerberg was there. So you had, and Justin Bieber sang, and I think he was paid something like $10 million to do a song. So obviously, they have shown that there is one Indian who is rich enough to get Justin Bieber to come and sing at
Mhm.
the concert. I mean, fine. So, and all these Bollywood stars were dancing and all that. I mean, it if anything, it showed that the stars are for hire.
Yes. And in your line of work, Salil, when you think about human rights and human rights violations and social and economic human rights violations, how does, and I suppose you, when you say you advise, your CV says you advise institutions on human rights and make assessments for them on how they, um, how their work stacks up. How would you assess a corporation like the Ambani's, Reliance Corporation?
So I think you have to judge them ultimately not by the shenanigans, but by the actual actions.
Mhm.
Now, if you look at their businesses, then they really have created world-class assets, right? I mean, they have built the largest refinery, certainly in Asia, maybe in the world. I'm not sure of that. It might be. Let's put it this way: they built the world's one of the top 5 refineries in the world. They are extremely efficient players in the market. They can get things done. They took 7 or 8 years, but they managed to make sure that India had great broadband. And not only that, they offered broadband at a very cheap rate. And as a result of that, India is very well connected. When I first came to America, which was in 1983, I was a student and my parents were in Bombay, and I would call them because it was very expensive for them to call me. Today, my brothers and others in India, they call me saying that, no, no, it costs us nothing because of our geo um, uh, internet that we have compared to what you have to pay for in New York through Verizon or whatever I have. So, yes, they have created world-class assets, world-class capacity, world-class infrastructure. So no one should take that away from them. They've also built world-class hospitals. I mean, or they've revived them. There was a hospital in Bombay, which was ramshackle and, in a poor state, and they've taken it over and they've made it state of the art. So there's a lot of good they have done. I mean, no question about it, and I will never take that away from them. But it gets distracted by all the other things. Now, Tatas have done something similar. Tatas have built the Institute of Science and Institute of National Center for the Performing Arts, but their marriages are not on this scale, and they don't spend in this manner. Similar with the Premji family, Azim Premji. I mean, he donates frequently for educating girls or building more schools. Now, I'm not saying Ambanis haven't done that. They do it, but the difference is this, that the others, the Tatas and the Premjis, are doing it as an act of philanthropy, which means there's some strategic purpose behind it. When Ambanis do it, it is an act of charity. So, I mean, when this wedding took place, Ambani supporters did say, but oh, they made sure that 100 or 1,000 such couples who are below poverty line, Ambani's paid for their wedding. Now, which is great for those 1,000 families. But those are episodic interventions in the economy and not something that is strategic, that is going to change something substantively compared to what Rimjis do, which is essentially, building schools.
Yes, but the Ambanis have, you said, done strategic interventions, like, for example, the broadband.
No, so that's exactly the thing. But broadband is not an act of charity. You have to pay for it, right? I mean, it may be that the rate isn't very expensive, but it's not given away for free. And I don't think it should be given away for free either. I'm not saying that that's the point here. But they see it as a business opportunity, because once you get on the broadband, then you will want to see movies. Okay, then there is Geo Cinema, which will give you all these channels. You will want to order things, fine. Geo has a supermarket, and it will give you a special discount if you're a Geo customer. So basically, it's a way to hook you in and get more business out of you, and which is all perfectly legitimate and no complaint at all about it.
But the great assets of the world that we all enjoy, the museums, the universities around the world, the Rome and Florence that we love, London itself, these are all built by robber barons, whether they
Absolutely. Empire. And supported by it, not just built. I mean, they continue to get supported by them.
Endowments by them.
Yeah.
So on balance, then, the report card from you for the Ambanis?
No, on balance, I think they could do a bit less of the exhibitionism and showmanship, showwomanship, whatever you want to call it. And think more strategically about their philanthropy and identify not just what they think India needs, but listen to what Indians say India needs and respond to that.
Interesting.
Because too often when the philanthropists decide to do something, they do something because the family now they built a Geo Center for Arts in Bombay, which is apparently very good. I've not been to India for the last 5 years, so I haven't been there. But apparently a great exhibition hall, and it has some of the finest Indian art. But is that the best way to support art? Because most of the artists who are displayed there are already millionaires, dollar millionaires, not rupee millionaires. Or should they be, just as a thought experiment, making sure that every school in India has crayons and watercolors and canvases they need so that the children can paint what they want whenever they want to? That's the question.
But Salil, if they give them crayons and pencils and paint, then how will the broadband be useful?
Because give them software with paintbrush type software.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. All I'm saying is that, figure out how you're going. And which is why some of these other interventions, Tatas have them. Mahindra has a great intervention called Nanhi Kali, which is, Nanhi Kali means the small bud, right? In Hindi and Urdu. And what Nanhi Kali does is that, you can, of course, I mean, the Olympics are on, and, this one Indian athlete called Manu Bakre, she's already won 2 bronze medals in shooting, which is more power to her. But rather than give her another $1 million as a prize, wouldn't it be wonderful if they were to teach or do something to get other young girls in India to play soccer or to even do pistol shooting and learn how to become the future champions of India? I think that's and what Nanhi Kali does is exactly that when Indian women started playing very well in, I think it was in athletics, they said we will focus on football, soccer. And they started making sure that schools around India had access to playgrounds and to play football. And I think that was amazing. Just as a confidence booster. And this was done by the Mahindra Group, The
Mahindra Group. And all these groups, we're going to take a pause in about 8 minutes, but it just occurs to me that all the groups we're talking about, the Reliance Group, the Ambanis, Premji, the Tatas, who else is in this mix? Mahindra Group, are they all Gujaratis?
Not Mahindra, but the others are, yes.
And what what do you subscribe this to, or
I
ascribe
think that's a great
to?
question. I mean, my next book is about exactly that. I mean, about who Gujaratis are and why they are the way they are. And I should say why they, I should say we, because I'm a Gujarati too.
Mhm.
But I'm a black sheep, I made no money. They made all the money. But that said, I think there is a desire to be entrepreneurial, a
Mhm.
desire to be enterprising. I mean, a good example is take the US. A lot of Indians or Indian Americans are now CEOs of large companies, right? I mean, whether it is Federal Express, whether it is Google, whether it is Microsoft, and for some time even Twitter. The CEO was an Indian. Pepsi had an Indian woman CEO at one point, Indra Nui.
Mhm.
But none of them were the Gujarati. They were all professionals who were from the Indian Institutes of Technology and places like that. But none of them were the Gujarati. Gujaratis like to build assets, they like to trade, they're entrepreneurial, they're enterprising, and they want to be their own master. They don't want to work for other people. And I think what you see with Premji, and it's interesting because it cuts across religion, because Premji is a Muslim, Tata is Parsi, and Ambani and Adani are Hindus or Jains or Vaniyas, as it may be. And therefore, it just shows you that there is, and if you look at the diamond industry, that's where the Jains are mainly, where there is Russell Mehta and Ashish Mehta and so on. So you do find Gujaratis being enterprising, being trade oriented, willing to go and trade wherever. One of the things that people complain that, Gujaratis are 5% of India's population, but less than 1% of the army. But when I ask Gujaratis about it, they say, yeah, we don't go out bravely to fight, but we go bravely to countries where we don't know the language, where we don't know how we'll be treated, and we start setting up a shop and trading. That requires courage and bravery. And I
Mhm.
think
Are you there?
I'm there.
Yeah. I agree. I think that at least the Gujaratis I know, there's a street smartness and a courage to them.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at Pakistan too, it's the same. The
Yes,
Khojas, Boras, and Memon in Karachi. If you
exactly.
go to the stock market, it's basically them who are running it.
They're Gujarati,
Yeah,
Maiman, Bori, they
and
are
Khojas and Parsis. Yeah, I mean
Parsi.
the beer factory in Murray is from they are Parsi Gujaratis. Habib Ben Kamtol was Gujarati. So there you go.
And the and many others, and I think it's this idea that you really have to rely on your ability to see opportunity, because you don't have a degree. Maybe now people are very, very educated, but that as shopkeepers and traders, you have to be looking out for the next good idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And you have to figure out how to build a long-term relationship, because you can't keep the price so high that no one will ever come back to you.
yeah, and
I
also
mean, you want to catch them at a low price and keep them hooked to you, which is exactly what Ambanis know how to do very well.
and one thing the Ambanis might have forgotten is that also, uh, you know, this grouping and other groups like them uh, you used to save a lot and not show off.
Yeah.
They sat
I
on.
mean, that's the interesting part about it, that Dhirubhai would not have, I mean, I know stories about how Dhirubhai Ambani, the father of the empire, was very unassuming, and you wouldn't be able to tell him, I mean, until he started wearing suits and all that. But in the early days, when he was a door-to-door marketing man for fabrics, I mean, you couldn't have known that this man is going to take over the world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Amazing! What a fascinating story they have. Um,
Yeah.
and the proof is that everybody, and including you and I was hoping to have a very different kind of a conversation with you today, and I'm going to steer us in that direction. But at this point, we're going to take a pause here, and then we'll come
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Salil, we were talking about your new book, The Gujaratis, and we were talking about Gujaratis. And in this story of them traveling and trade, does location matter?
No, actually not, because Gujaratis have been incredibly successful as traders even within their own state. I mean, they have always believed that we succeed in spite of the state and not because of the state. They've never wanted state support. In fact, they like the state to be as far from them as possible. They are, I mean, as I've said, more as a joke, but I mean, partly serious. They were capitalists before capitalism was invented. And I mean, if you look at the earliest Gujarati traders who left um, Gujarat to trade elsewhere or even within as middlemen, middlewomen in trade between, let's say, West Asia and Middle East and Southeast Asia. They were doing it in the 15th, 16th, and 17th century. And basically, you're talking about a time before Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations. So, in a way, I mean, of course, capitalism preceded Adam Smith, but that's supposed to be the Bible of capitalism. But before that, these people knew how to make money. And while I was doing my research, I found 15th and 16th century references where Italian and Portuguese traders have just sung praises upon praises of Gujarati traders. They turn up there's an English governor of a part of Bombay who goes to Zanzibar, which is now part of Tanzania, and is stunned to find Gujarati traders there. So, they were there. I mean, and one Gujarati trader very confidently told a Dutch academic that, because the Dutch academic said that, oh, you're in Africa so that you can trade with Europe. He said, no, we are in Africa so that Europeans can trade with Africa.
By location, I meant because of its coastal.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Gujarat has the largest coastline in India because of its peculiar shape. And that has made a huge difference. So two things have happened, both push and pull factors, because it's also true that Gujarat doesn't get good rainfall many times and there are droughts, which pushes people out, and therefore they go to Africa and the Middle East, typically, because they're the closest foreign part for them. And the pull factor, I mean, I've written about Nanji Kalidas Mehta, who over a 40-year period made 28 trips out of Saurashtra on the west coast in Gujarat to East Africa. And, he was a king of sugarcane and sisal and palm and all those things in Kenya and Uganda.
And what role do you think that the Gujarati traders and financiers or moneylenders, etc., play in the empire and colonialism?
Oh, it's such a good question. Thank you for asking that, because they were beneficiaries of the empire. They followed the empire. Wherever the flag went, they went to be the middle people, and they were there to, be the brokers and dalals, as we call it in Gujarati, or traders, and making sure that, there was what the people wanted. They would always bring. You wanted screws, you wanted nuts and bolts, you wanted hammers. They will try to get it for you, and they were there, and that's exact. And also, they liked working and operating under the British rule because they were promised a certain kind of rule of law and equal treatment, as long as the dispute was between two people of color. As soon as you were fighting with a white person, then all rules changed, as Gujaratis found out in East Africa. But when it was an Indian and a black, or an Indian against an Indian, or a Gujarati against a Tamil, they knew that they would get justice, which was not always possible under the Mughals or other kings before that.
So interesting. Again, that whole concept of opportunity.
Yeah, very opportunistic people.
And I suppose, well, I don't suppose, I know Muhammad Ali Jinnah was Gujarati.
Yeah, he was a Gujarati, he was a Khoja. Absolutely, you're right.
Jinnah Punja. A bit of a dispute whether he was Khoja or whether he was Bori.
I'll have to look up my notes again, but yeah. But yeah, he was certainly Gujarati, let's put it that way.
Claims him, and the Khojas claim him as well. But yeah, Gujarati. So is there anybody else who's founded, who's assigned a whole country other than Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who's Gujarati?
Well, Gandhi.
Gandhi, yes. Gandhi was Gujarati as well.
Can't forget him.
My God, the Gujaratis have the whole market cornered.
Yeah, no. In fact, one of the things I've said in my book is exactly that the currency notes of both India and Pakistan have Gujaratis on their face.
Wonderful. That is amazing.
Yeah,
I mean, I know that, but when you put it that way, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait to read your new book. When is it
Thank
coming
you.
out?
Well, it's meant to come out in India in November, and I mean, my agent is looking for a publisher worldwide, but we are not there yet because I'm still working on the final edits as we speak. Yeah.
Well, if you ever, well, it's going to go on Amazon, obviously, but if you want, a little ebook company in Pakistan to carry it, it's the Little Book Company.
I'll tell my agents and publishers. Yeah.
And
And because the thing is that I don't know how it. I mean, I don't understand the contracts very well, but I do know that the Indian publisher has rights for South Asia, so I think we might need to talk to them first. Yeah.
right. Well, we'll do that. But in any case, I'm very interested in reading this book, and I hope you'll be coming to the festivals, literary festivals in Pakistan, in Karachi, and
Oh, I'd
Bombay.
love to. I was in Lahore, the Lahore Festival, I think in 2015, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
And it's the only time I've been to Pakistan, so I'd love to come again. Yeah.
I met you there, and I think that in Karachi they'll have to book a huge auditorium.
Yeah, because Karachi is full of Gujaratis. For a long time, Dawn, the newspaper, used to have a page in Gujarati on certain days of the week. I was told that. Yeah.
Yes, and so you're going to have to be a box office hit in Karachi. Uh,
Yeah, and there is a section I've written about a little bit about Gujaratis in Pakistan. It's a short section
yeah, we
because since I haven't been there. I mean, I've not been to Karachi, and most of them were in Karachi. And the Parsi community, which is dwindling very fast. But of course, there are Parsis in Pakistan.
of course, and we'll have to sell the tickets in black and make some money on it.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about. I don't know what to do first. Ask you to read the poem for which you got into trouble with,
Sure.
or do we talk about your book, The Colonel Who Would Not Repent, the Bangladesh War and its
Yeah, I mean, because Bangladesh is so much in the news, I mean, happy to talk about that. I'll leave it to you, what you prefer. Yeah,
I'd first like to, I think, have you recite this
sure,
poem, which I think reflects on who you are, Salil.
sure, sure. I know you always blame your mother for what you are. So that's what I've done in this poem. It's called My Mother's Fault. And I mean, she died in 2004 at a very young age. She was 69. But I mean, she was a little child in 1940s when the Quit India movement had started. So I start with that and talk about the sense of anguish she had when the Babri Masjid was destroyed. That's what the poem is about.
Mm.
My mother's fault. You marched with other 7-year-old girls singing songs of freedom at dawn in rural Gujarat, believing that would shame the British and they would leave India. 5 years later, they did. You smiled when you first saw Makbul Fida Hussein's nude sketches of Hindu goddesses and laughed when I told you that some people wanted to burn his art. Have those people seen any of our ancient sculptures? Those are far naughtier, you said. Your voice broke on December 6, 1992, as you called me at my office in Singapore when they destroyed the Babri Masjid. We have just killed Gandhi again, you said. We had. Ahu te karai koi divas? Can anyone do such a thing anytime? You asked, aghast, staring at television as Hindu mobs went house to house looking for Muslims to kill after a train compartment in Gozra burned, killing 58 Hindus in February 2002. You were right each time. After reading what I've been writing over the years, some folks have complained that I just don't get it. I live abroad. What do I know about India? But I knew you, and that was enough. And that's why I turned out this way.
Hmm. That's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Salil, how much do you think the diaspora has to be accountable for what happens in terms of extremism in countries like India or Pakistan or Israel
I
or
think there are two parts to it. I think the diaspora is always frozen in time. So it's frozen in the time with which it comes elsewhere. Now, I was born in the early 60s and I'm part of the Indian diaspora, but I did grow up in the pre-Modi India and the pre-BJP India. So I carry with me, so I'm much more firmly rooted in those ideas. But the new Indians who are coming out now are all part of the generation after that, and therefore they come with a very different perspective. So we need to break down the diaspora. It's not a monolith. And I think the same probably applies to Bangladesh and Pakistan, that there are people who might be hankering for an Ayub Khan Pakistan or a Bhutto Pakistan, and there might be people who are yearning for Imran Khan Pakistan for that matter. And same with Bangladesh, people who want Mujib's Bangladesh or Zia's Bangladesh. And each of these are at loggerheads with one another. So that's one thing worth bearing in mind. The other thing to bear in mind is that while the diaspora is influential because of their resources and wealth to commit funds to specific charities and even political parties in home countries, the foot soldiers are in those countries and the change has to be there. I mean, diaspora can be influential to a point, but it can rarely completely bring about a political change. I mean, if you look at Israel and Palestine today, I mean, it's a very good example because you live in New York, I live in New York, and we know the Jewish voices of peace. And I don't know anyone who's more committed to peace to Israel Palestine than those Jewish voices for peace. They are willing to march. They want Netanyahu to go. They want a trial against him, and they want a peaceful existence and a peace treaty and ceasefire and all the rest. But they're completely powerless and meaningless. What they are talking about, and they always send me videos of what's happening on the ground in Israel, and you do see hundreds of thousands of people in Tel Aviv and elsewhere protesting against the state. So ultimately, the change can only come from within. The diaspora can play an influential role, and if it has disproportionate access to resources, and what is particularly bothersome today is disproportionate access to technology that can manipulate people's opinions, then there is an issue. But if you really look back at the way the IT cells of various parties are working, I mean, again, I know India better than other countries, but in 2014 and 19, the BJP was ruthlessly efficient about putting out memes and making fun of Rahul Gandhi and so on. But this election that just ended in India, you saw Congress fighting back very well through certain handles. And of course, Congress didn't win and all the rest. I mean, we know what happened in the end in the election, but Modi was denied the majority. So I think there are elements where, the diaspora can be influential, but it cannot completely shape a narrative. The way people say it can simply because it has a lot more money. Because let's look at it this way, Ambani is the richest Indian in the world, and he's in India. He's not an Indian abroad. So there's a lot of money within these countries to do what they want to do. And what we can do from outside is relatively, I wouldn't call it insignificant, but not as substantial as it is being made out to be.
Hmm.
But it's an opinion. I could be wrong. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not done any study. I mean, I'm just
yeah,
expressing a view based on what I see.
yeah. I think I might not totally agree with you there
Yep.
because the financing from here has been substantial, and it also is a messaging that a very powerful messaging that percolates and permeates into the home countries from the diaspora. They can send their gold bricks um, to build temples, and that makes it sound like that's the right kind of trendy thing to do. They can wear their uh, you know hijabs here and make that look very modern, and relay that and communicate that back. They can support the Modis and the Imran Khans and the Netanyahus from here, you know. And that, in fact, is somehow, at least, you know, for Netanyahu and what's happening in Pakistan, that seems to definitely come a lot from very, very wealthy and influential diaspora.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I'm not denying that. I mean, I hear that view, but
yeah,
I do feel that ultimately to win the battle at the ballot box in the country, and
yes,
none of the people outside have a vote, whereas those people have the votes.
that's right. That is absolutely right. And speaking about votes and how the internal turmoils, you wrote this book called "The Colonel Who Would Not Repent:
Yeah,
The Bangladesh War and Its Unquiet Legacy." Um, and by the colonel, you're referring to the
Farooq Rahman.
Rahman, who was responsible for, had a big hand in the assassination of Mujibur Rahman.
That's right.
And he went free for quite a while,
Yeah, till 2011, actually. Yeah.
until 2011, until a war crimes tribunal uh,
Hmm.
awarded him punishment and he was executed.
Yeah.
But he was not executed for the assassination attempt, assassination planning.
He was. I mean, he was part of the conspiracy because he led it. He wasn't the guy who shot Mujib because he wasn't there then.
Mhm.
But I mean, it was one of the charges against him.
Mhm. And how come he was allowed to walk around free for so long?
Yeah, it's very interesting because if you look at the politics, in 1975, Mujib was assassinated.
Mhm.
And after that, Kondakar and others who came to power, they asked him to leave. And he went off to Libya for some reason, for some time. He came back in early 80s and decided to run for president against General Ershad in 1986, which is when I met him.
Mhm.
I was a very young reporter and I was in Dhaka covering the elections. And he got 5% of the vote. But what surprised me was not the fact that he was a candidate, all that he had 5% of the vote, but the ease with which he moved around because of the climate of fear. And it just made me wonder that, here's Mujibur Rahman, the father of the nation. This man has killed him and he can walk around as though nothing has happened.
Mhm.
And while Hasina came back in 1981 to Bangladesh, she was elected in 1991, but it was a coalition government for 5 years and then she lost. And then she comes back to power only in 2008. So that entire period, you had people in power in Bangladesh who are hostile to the Mujib legacy. So
Mhm.
one simple example is that, the slogan for the Bangladeshi independence was Joy Bangla, which is a pure Bengali term for victory to Bengal. And towards the mid 90s, they started talking about Bangladesh Zindabad, which is Urdu equivalent of saying victory to or hail Bangladesh. And I mean, the whole rationale of Bangladesh to be an independent country was that it was not an Urdu speaking country, it was a Bengali speaking country. So
Yeah.
that was itself very interesting what happened. But when she came to power, she reopened those cases and she tried them again. And then she executed Farouk and the others first. And then the formal tribunals came into being. And they executed about 8 or 9 or maybe 11 people, of whom about 9 or 10 were from Jamaat Islami and one was from the Bangladesh National Party. And I think the process was halted because basically they were after the people that they call the Razakars, those who were in Bengal and Bengalis but had sided with Pakistan during the War of Liberation.
Hmm. Salil, are you there?
I'm there, yeah, yeah.
So, so it seems to me that there was a, would it be, is there, that the establishment in Bangladesh, the bureaucracy and the establishment in Bangladesh was anti-Mujib.
Well, I'm not sure whether they were anti-Mujib because I think in 71 he was incredibly popular. By 1974, he lost popularity because of the famine and because of the way Rokhi Bahini, which was this militia which supported Mujib, was spreading a reign of terror. And then in 1975, he created a one-party state. He created something called Bakshal, which was the Bangladesh Krishak Shramik Awami League, which is the Bangladesh Party for Farmers and Laborers. That's the simplest way to translate it. Yeah, for People's Party. And that's what he created in 1975. He abolished other parties. He, created, a national news agency and so on. And that was in, I think, 75. And within weeks or months, he was assassinated. Um, and that created a pall of gloom on one hand, but also created a lot of terror. And people didn't speak out. I mean, one thing that many people who remember those days always tell me that we were surprised that there was no protest. No one stepped out because I think people were too scared to come out and challenge it.
Hmm.
And he always remained at the back of the minds of people that, somebody who had done a lot, but he was the prime minister for barely 3.5 years. And Hasina became the inheritor of the legacy. So when she came back, she rekindled those memories and she worked with Khalida Zia and she worked even with Jamaat. And, they created this movement to restore democracy and they succeeded in 91. And then in 96, she loses.
Hmm. Interesting. My mind that always looks for patterns. I'm thinking Mujibur Rahman got assassinated in 1975, and 2 years later, Bhutto
Yes.
lost his place, and 2 years after that, he was hung by
Yeah.
the establishment. And what you had left on maybe the reason why the Bangladeshis didn't rise up after his assassination, they were too traumatized. They had gone through
Yeah.
this,
Very likely.
and on this side, people were just totally shell shocked as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at it, if you and I were to take a step back from the whole thing and look at our subcontinent and say, well, Bangladesh occurred in 1971, barely 20 years after the separation of the division of the subcontinent into
Yeah.
countries and three halves. So it's been such a traumatic, tumultuous time
Mm-hmm.
that to expect that leaders will survive that is perhaps asking for too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And all the other things that happened, Gandhi got assassinated shortly after partition, and then after Bhutto came, after Mujib and Bhutto, Indira Gandhi was assassinated.
Yeah. Indira Gandhi in 1984 and Rajiv Gandhi in 1991.
Yeah, and then Benazir.
Yeah. Benazir after that. Yeah.
It's not so long. No, it's not so long a separation between all these killings of leaders.
Mm.
Hmm. I don't know. How do you look at that from a human rights perspective? What were they doing, and what came in their wake?
I mean, each of those assassinations was for a separate reason, right?
Mhm,
I mean, Bhutto's was a clinical state execution.
mhm,
Indira Gandhi was arguably a retaliation over what happened at the Golden Temple. Rajiv Gandhi was also a retaliation over what India did in Sri Lanka.
mhm,
And without going into the merits of whether what India did was right or wrong is a separate story. Um, Gandhi was a completely lunatic Hindu nationalist and fundamentalist who blamed Gandhi for the partition. Most people who have a mature reading of Indian history know that effectively after 1942, Gandhi was quite powerless in influencing Congress party because he did issue the call for quit India in 42. He was kept in jail till 45. When he comes out in 45, basically it becomes Nehru and Patel's party. And Gandhi has a kind of a moral appeal. People like to keep going back to him, but all he can do is, go to Bengal and salve the wounds of people who are hurt and injured and call for peace. But he ceased to be a force politically by then. But, I mean, Godse, who killed him, didn't think that way. So each of these assassins, and all one can say is that the people who did the act, whether it was the Pakistani state or the generals in Bangladesh or the rebels from Sri Lanka and and and, and Punjab, what they did was basically they thought this was the only way to settle the debate and only way to get the revenge that they wanted, because they knew that they would not have got it through the ballot box. I mean, it's a theory. I mean, I can't prove it, but that's the only way I can see it.
Mm-hmm.
And Gandhi was never a politician, right? He never stood for a single election. I mean, the only election he ever won was in 1936 or 30. I'll have to look up my notes again, when he became the president of the Gujarati Literary Academy in India, which is completely powerless post, but that's the only time he stood for elections and won.
Oh, let's say he was a very smart Gujarati.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
Right. Wow. And your book, Detours, Songs of the
Yes.
Open Road. Tell me about that. I know nothing
Yeah,
about
so that's it's a book of travel essays. What happened was that there's a newspaper in Bombay, in India, called
Mhm.
Mint. And it's like, Wall Street Journal, Financial Times. It's a business newspaper. But in its weekend section, I had a column called Detours, which was basically writing about places, but from an angle, and not writing the classic travel and tourism story, saying that we went here, we ate this, we stayed here, and the scenery was beautiful, and this is what you must do, and this is what you must wear when you are there. So it was not that kind of a travel book, but it just evolved on its own to see places at an angle. So, I mean, because my human rights work took me to places like Bosnia and Nigeria and South Africa and Cambodia, and as a journalist also. So I started writing about those places, and and Indonesia and so on, Colombia, and the whole book is basically about places like that in the first third of the book. The second third deals with, there are some writers and artists who I've admired a lot. So I've tried to follow their footsteps. So it's Hemingway and Isaac Dinesen and Japanese haiku writers and all of that. And the third part was very personal, because my wife died in 2006 and we used to travel a lot before that. And so after she died, I took my sons with me to some of those places again. So it's more like a personal journey, going back to the places which offered me the glimpses of her again. So it's about war and peace. It's about words and images, and it's about love and loss.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
And what were the places that you loved to visit with her?
Oh, there are many I'd like to go again. I love northern Norway. I love Bali. I love Colombia. I mean, there's a long chapter on Colombia. I did enjoy. I mean, I know nobody likes to say they'll enjoy, but you've written about Sarajevo, so you know Bosnia very well.
Yeah.
But I was in Bosnia, and I've written about the Mostar Bridge, and I was there when the last stone was put to rebuild the bridge.
Okay.
So about that, about Stari Most.
Mhm.
And yeah, there's a nice section about Kenya. There's a lovely chapter about South Africa.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, these are not, I mean, South Africa people typically go for safaris, but I went to the Robben Island, I went to the Apartheid Museum, and I went to Botanical Gardens in Cape Town, which is where you have the hedge, which was first built by the Dutch or Afrikaners, as they were called later, to keep out the Khoi or the Khoisan people. And it was the beginning of the idea of apartheid, apartheid, keep people who are not like you separate from you.
Mhm.
So all of that is there in that book, yeah.
And
And the
why?
good news is that it's going to come back now. I mean, in the sense that the publisher wants me to look at it again now that I've finished the big book on Gujaratis, to look at it again. And she also wants me to write the second volume, because when I wrote those essays for the column, and these were short pieces, 900 words, and the book has about 2,000, 3,000 word chapters on each of these sections or each of these places. And what she wants me to do is to do something similar about the places that are not in the first book. Because I've been to Senegal, to the, the what is called the door of no return in Dakar, from where the slaves were taken for the transatlantic journey. And it was written as a short column, but it was never in the big book because there was no space. So my editor now wants me to volume 2. So maybe that's the next book I'll tackle.
Why not? That sounds like a wonderful book to
Yeah, it's a wonderful project to think about because I've been so immersed in Gujarat and India for the last 8 years. It'd be nice to go on a wanderlust again. Yeah.
But India itself, the subcontinent, the whole subcontinent is a world unto itself. There's enough wonder, enough there to satisfy any wanderlust.
Yeah, that is true. And there are vast parts of India I've not visited. I've not been to the Northeast at all. I've not been to certain parts in Northern India. And there are certain parts in South I've not really been. I've been to the big cities, almost every state, but the interior of many states I've not been. So, I mean, I know Gujarat very well, Maharashtra well, Uttar Pradesh well, Bengal very well, but not the other places.
And what about in Pakistan, other than Lahore? Where have you?
Only Lahore for 5 days, unfortunately.
Was that all your visa was for?
I think, no, I had a British passport then, so it was not I could have stayed longer, but for some reason I had to come back. I think I was meant to go somewhere else on work, so I had to come back after 5 days, yeah.
Well,
so the festival was 3 days, and I think I stayed one more day, and I went with the Lebanese American writer Rabi Alameddin and Osama Samiuddin and Kamila Shamsie and a few others went to the big mosque and this wonderful kebab place outside that. And we went to see Kipling's gun, and Muniza, Kamila's mother, took me the next morning to see all that. So yeah, I did see a little bit of it, but it's certainly not enough. I have to go back.
Shalimar Gardens and...
No, I didn't do that. No, I want to do that. In fact, I want to see Karachi because, everybody has always told me that Karachi is the sister city of Bombay. So having lived in Bombay, I have to see Karachi.
You have to come to Karachi. You have to go to Karachi. I'm saying this sitting in New York. You have to come to Karachi because that's where you're going to be at home. That's where
I'm sure I will feel at home. I mean, because I've seen photographs, because I have some wonderful Pakistani friends who have shown me pictures of Karachi, and it looks like Bombay.
Yeah, but it's not about how it looks. It's about how it feels.
I'm sure.
Yes, you're going to love it. And so I think that, you're going to come to the literature festival there. And
yeah, I mean, it's for the festival organizers to do the magic, but yeah.
Indeed. Well, Salil, we're going to wrap up our conversation here.
Yep.
And you and I will meet again for a cup of coffee or for lunch very soon.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that after the 15th August. Because then I would have sent my book back to the editors and I'll be a free man.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And we will do that. And I will try to angle for an early copy of the Gujaratis, which I'm really anxious to read. And again, Salil, thank you so much for talking with me today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you.